The Full Circle Podcast. Compelling interviews and incredible tales from Colorado's Western Slope, from the mountains to the desert. Christy Reese and her team hear from the movers, shakers, and characters of the Grand Valley and surrounding mountain towns that make the Western Slope the place we all love. You'll learn, you'll laugh, you'll love with The Full Circle. Hi, everyone. This is Christy Reese, and welcome back to the Full Circle Podcast. I'm excited to have our guest today, Ryan Schramm, the general manager of Powderhorn Mountain Resort here in the beautiful Grand Valley. Kind of in the Grand Valley. Do you consider yourself in the Grand Valley up there?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, part of the community, for sure. A big part of the community. So, Ryan, I've been reading about your background and everything, but tell our listeners and our viewers where you grew up and about your ski background.
Okay. Long story and very complicated, but not really. So I grew up in northern central Pennsylvania. Not necessarily known for, really great skiing, but I grew up at a really small ski area, about 500 vertical feet. It has like a couple T-bars and a double chairlift.
Take what you can get, right?
Yep, still in operation today, but
so great.
My dad worked there. He was the ski school director, ski patrol director, the race director, all that fun stuff. Wear a lot of hats. And they had night skiing, so I used to ski 5, 6, 7 days a week. Every day after school, I would go and do homework in the lodge at one of the picnic tables, and then, go ski and train. I grew up racing quite a bit, so I raced all over Pennsylvania when I was a small kid, and then as I got a little older, we moved into New York, and I raced in New York for a while, and kind of went from there. My dad also owns a ski and bike shop, so I worked in the back of my dad's shop for a long time while I was growing up. So then I decided to go to culinary school because, that fits with ski racing. But went to culinary school and did some pretty cool things and some internships. Worked in New York for a while.
New York City.
Yeah, and then decided that maybe the restaurant thing in the '90s wasn't so fun anymore. And then I went.
That had to have been crazy in New York in the '90s.
Yeah, that's an understatement. Definitely a different world than it is today. And so then I went into corporate food service and did that for a long time. Worked for all the big companies, Aramark and Sodexo and Brock & Company. It's based in Philly. And all while doing that, I was coaching ski racing on weekends. So I was still always involved. And then my wife and I were living in Philadelphia at the time. We got in this big car accident on the way to Atlantic City, which is what you do when you live in Philly, and then every weekend in the summer you go to Atlantic City or the Jersey Shore, basically. Right. I think there was a show about that at one point.
I heard, yeah.
And we got in this big car accident, and both of us were just like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Why do we live here?
Well, you're smiling as you tell that story. Were you injured badly?
No. Neither of us were really injured badly. I mean, my wife had some whiplash or whatever, but but it was kind of that like final wake up call of, wow, we're both professionals and we both work a million hours, but we aren't really doing anything that we really, really, really like. So she decided to go back to school to get her PhD, and I kind of had maybe an early midlife crisis and said, you know what, I'm going to take a little break from all the, the corporate world and go coach ski racing for a winter. So I made a couple of phone calls to some friends in New England, and we ended up in New Hampshire. I ended up coaching and taking over the race program at a place called Ragged Mountain. And that was probably, 2010 maybe. While my wife went back to school to get her PhD in pharmacology. And so I just kept like showing up at Ragged Mountain, and I kept getting a paycheck, and it was supposed to be a seasonal job, and that was basically with the same company for the last 12 years.
And so that first year that you were coaching the racing, was it just your heart was filled up. You felt like, okay, I am where I'm supposed to be now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was kind of going back to my childhood and thinking about some of my coaches when I was growing up. And yeah, that was definitely the best job I ever had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But being in the food service industry, it's kind of cool now being GM at a ski area. You have a little appreciation for dining at the ski area and what you can and can't provide and what people want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, across our enterprise, of our 5 resorts, it's 25 to 30% of all of our revenue is food and beverage. So it's an important piece. Hospitality's an important piece. I always like to say that, we're really in the hospitality business. We're not in the ski business. There's a distinct difference there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, so you came to Powderhorn in what year?
Our company assumed operations in November of 2018. So since then, yeah.
And was it hard for you to leave New Hampshire, or were you excited to come to Colorado?
Well, a little bit of both. I mean, it's always bittersweet. I'd been in New Hampshire for, 8 years, made a lot of friends and have a lot of connections there that I still enjoy. So of course that leaving some of those things behind is a little bittersweet. At the same time, Colorado is exciting, and the recreation opportunities when you live in Western Colorado are pretty exponential. So, yeah.
And had you ever been to this area before?
A long time ago, like a million years ago, went riding kind of through mountain biking, Fruita and Moab, probably 25 years ago. Yeah.
So obviously there's a big elevation difference. What are some of the other differences and there's a snow difference, right? What else did you notice when you came here that was different about skiing here and the ski industry here?
Well, obviously the conditions can be a little different. It's always sunny. I think that was probably the first thing that I noticed. Even when you get a big giant snowstorm, it's always sunny, like either that day or the day after. In New England, when it snows, then it's cloudy for at least 3 weeks after. So of course that's a big change. I am a firm snow advocate, so because I grew up racing and I like to use my edges from time to time, and firm snow is not a bad thing, but at the same time, boy, those big POW days can be a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. That's a big difference, culturally. I think Colorado is different from New England in a lot of ways. It's a little bit more laid back, a little bit slower pace of life sometimes, and that's not a bad thing.
Yeah. Do the two ski areas compare in size a little bit?
Yeah.
How big is Ragged Mountain?
Yeah, Ragged Mountain is about 1,200 vertical feet. Powderhorn's 1,650. So they're similar in size, similar in skier visit numbers. Powderhorn is by far one of the largest resorts by acreage that we have in our portfolio. So, 1,600 acres versus, Ragged is 250.
Oh, wow.
Right. So.
Yeah, that's a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we can find those secret stashes of powder even a week after it snows.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm not telling you where mine are.
No. Okay. Darn it. After the show.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So when the management wanted to bring you here to Powderhorn, what did they give you as your mission? This is what we want you to do here, Ryan.
Well, in certain ways, there wasn't a specific directive. It's more, let's figure out what Powderhorn is, what's its niche, what's the goals there. Let's not pull on any levers really hard right away. Let's just, make it better. Take what we're doing and make it better. And we do that across all of our resorts when we bring them into the portfolio. Let's not necessarily come in with some mandate or dictation of this is a model that works. Let's figure it out and how do we best adapt those or best maybe make them more efficient and streamlined so that they're kind of firing on all cylinders. That's really the goal there.
So what do you think Powderhorn's niche is?
I think it is a really great community resource. I think that it is a lot of fun to ski. It's got some really good terrain. It doesn't always, get a lot of the best ratings for, the steepest or longest runs or things like that. But boy, it's so playful. And when it snows, boy, it skis a lot bigger than it actually is.
I would agree with that. I'm just getting goosebumps thinking about it.
So
much fun. I mean, I go up there skiing with my kids and my friends, and without fail, every time I'm up there, I think how lucky I am to have that so close to home. And last year, I remember a couple times being in the snowstorm, not riding up the lift and not being able to see anything, and knowing that I had a pretty short drive home, like I'm going up a chairlift into a blizzard and it's really awesome. And then I'm going to be home in an hour and warm. And it's a great little spot. It's a gem. Talk a little bit about Mission Affordable, because that's a program that you brought from New Hampshire, right? And talk about what its intent was and how successful it was.
Well, we started that in Ragged a number of years ago. And, in certain ways, it was, Ragged in New Hampshire was in a different place than Powderhorn is in Colorado. It's 90 minutes from Boston, a major metropolitan area, but, there's 30, 40, 50 ski areas within a 2-hour drive of Boston, right?
Really?
Yeah, there's because you got most of Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, some really big, very interesting places. So, part of the Mission Affordable, or that original mission, was really just to differentiate Ragged from some of the competitors. Mount Sunapee, which is now a Vail property. Ragged had 250 acres and Sunapee had maybe 255, and Mount Sunapee had a high-speed lift and Ragged had a high-speed lift. And, I think Ragged's 1,250 vertical feet and Mount Sunapee was 1,280 or something like that. I mean, they're very, very, very similar. So why go to one versus the other? And we were coming out of a really, really lean, really challenging snow year. We closed the ski resort a couple of weeks early because it was 75 or 80 degrees, very unseasonable weather and temperatures. And we just kind of came up with this program to solve a couple of problems, right? To make sure that we could continue on with the resort, but then also to drive new business, to drive some trial and some experimentation. People were like, "Wow, that pass is so inexpensive that why wouldn't I buy that?"
Yeah.
Right?
Can't afford not to ski.
Yeah, I can't. Exactly. And it restored a lot of confidence in the marketplace, in the Ragged product. And we went from zero to hero in a really rare, in one season. And it took a lot of planning before that first winter, because we had sold more passes than we had ever sold before. So it was a product that really resonated in that marketplace, and helped Ragged grow exponentially. So it was really important, and it was really fun to be kind of part of that transformation. Yeah. And that product really kind of transferred to Powderhorn in a meaningful way. Again, you've got some of the world's best ski areas in Colorado, not that far away. Mm-hmm. So again, how's Powderhorn? We already talked about it skis really well, but not a lot of people know that. So how do we differentiate Powderhorn in the Colorado marketplace? And again, Mission Affordable has kind of done the trick and fit the bill. Mm-hmm. And started to transform that resort.
And is that program still going on?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are season passes selling for right now?
Right now, an adult pass is $479, and until September 6th. So if you're listening, make sure that you get in on that deal before the prices increase. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly one of the best deals in Colorado.
What does a pass cost at, say, Aspen or Telluride now?
I'm not sure about Telluride off the top of my head. I think, an Aspen pass is $2,000 to $2,200, something like that for an adult. Yeah.
So what other kinds of programs are you excited about bringing to Powderhorn, or other programs that you have done or some that you might have coming up?
So one of the programs that we did develop at Powderhorn is the Bob Beverly Free Learn to Ski program, Free Learn to Ski and Snowboard program. That's gone through a few evolutions, and it will continue to evolve. But I think that's been a very interesting and beneficial program to allow some people that might not have normally tried skiing to try it 3 times and kind of get their feet wet and be able to come back a couple of times to really kind of have a good progression of learning before hanging it up or becoming a skier or a snowboarder. So that's been an important one for us, and I think we'll continue to evolve that over time to fit the marketplace and make it work.
Powderhorn lodging. What's going on up there with all of the properties that are owned by the resort itself and other private entities? What's the latest?
Well, that gets complicated. There's a lot of different entities involved there. Ultimately, Powderhorn only operates the tiny homes. They're the only ones that we're directly operating and involved with. Of course, we still have the Golden Woods properties there. Those are run by RCI, so an outside party, and they're owned. Kind of like a timeshare setup, I believe. And then the Slopeside building that's been there for a number of years has recently changed hands. So I'm anxious to see kind of what happens with that parcel, being really our next door neighbor.
Yeah, as they have lodging and restaurant facility.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So snowmaking. You've made some big improvements in snowmaking up at the resort since your arrival here. How's that going?
Right. Pretty well. Snowmaking, I think, is key for a number of reasons, but one is just being able to eliminate a little bit of the variability of weather. As time progresses and time marches on, the variability of weather gets more exponential. Right. So we need to be able to insulate ourselves and insulate our business a little bit from that variability. So snowmaking is key, and developing snowmaking over time, increasing capacity, increasing the amount of trails that are covered by snowmaking. Those are all a big focus for us going forward. That was a really, really large project to get across the finish line. Access to a lot of water from the city of Grand Junction up on the reservoir, the Anderson Reservoir that's up on the very top. There's a little bit of creative engineering that went into that project too. There were a lot of people that said you just can't run a pipeline down a big rock cliff, and turns out that you can. So that was it's been a big fun project to be a part of, and that started to again kind of transform Powderhorn into something that's a reliable product. Again, people have the confidence that we're going to open in early December, whether it snows or not, and we'll be able to stay open until the end of March or April, because we've got that pad, that insulation from what's going on.
Was the beginning of the 21 season the first year with the new snowmaking equipment?
Yeah, the 2021 season was the first year. And kind of working out some of the bugs and that sort of thing. This past winter was really the first winter that we were able to operate it at its, maximum capacities and things like that. And then of course, we had the warmest November on record last year. So of course it was, despite having access to water and some really good state-of-the-art automated snowmaking, you still need it to be below 32 degrees to make snow. So that was certainly a little bit of a challenge, and we didn't quite make our desired opening day by a week. So that was a little hard, but
it was still earlier than average.
Earlier
right?
than ever.
Earlier than ever.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yep.
Yeah.
So again, if we have a nice cold end of October and November, we'll be able to open Thanksgiving weekend.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Just think, everybody, we could be skiing at Thanksgiving at Powderhorn.
Yeah.
Yay.
I just thought about it. It's about 60 days until we would start making snow.
Wow. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So how has the drought all over Colorado affected not only Powderhorn, but the ski industry as a whole here in Colorado?
Well, it certainly had an impact, especially when you think about snowmaking and snowmaking water. Sometimes that's had a negative impact on the amount of water areas are able to extract or use. At the same time, it often has a positive effect because you're not actually using water. You're just storing water and letting it melt and leach back into the system that it came from over a longer period of time. So in certain ways, it's also a really nice buffer. So kind of dealing with that perception and the yin and yang of that equation can be challenging. Climate change is on everyone's radar, drought, how dry things are, wildfires, the threat of wildfires. There was a tiny little fire at the very end of the canyon there where 65 meets I-70. It had everyone panicked. Could that thing flare up? And, is it 180,000 acres like the Pine Gulch fire was a few summers ago?
So much dead timber everywhere, the beetle kill and just dry conditions. Yeah.
Exactly.
Scary.
So this summer has been, while it's been a little bit challenging operationally, the damp and wet part of the summer has been really good to see. The soils are damp and not dried out, and to see that come back a little bit and be revitalized is good.
And you all, speaking of summer, you all have been working on your summer programs, mountain biking, weddings, events.
Yeah. COVID really put a damper on weddings and events. Most of our wedding business, was either canceled, postponed. This summer was really the first year that we've done, more weddings and, had a full wedding program. I'd say the same thing about events. We really didn't have much in the way of events the last 2 summers or 2 winters. Being able to see some of those events come back, like Gears and Beers, which is this coming Saturday. The Color Weekend, being able to revitalize those and bring those back. Events add just that little bit of, intangible feel and activity to the resort that make it feel good and make you feel like you're a part of something and you want to come back. So those are really integral to what we do.
Well, talk more about the mountain biking and how, what's the expansion goal for the mountain biking? We've got a lot of trails now, and what a fun thing to be able to do. And it's such a nice complement to the cycling community and the opportunities that we have down here, and plus the plunge, and to be able to go up and ride the lift up and race down. Super fun. How many miles of trails would you say you have right now?
I don't know if off the top of my head. I'd have to go back and look. Probably the newest project that we just wrapped up last week was the connector. So it's a trail that connects the top of Powderhorn with the plunge.
Nice.
So again, that's it's kind of outside of our Forest Service permit area, but it's a very interesting trail. It also makes a lot of loops that didn't really exist before. So riding, even if you weren't riding in the bike park, you could ride, West Bench and Rimview and this connector trail and kind of make a loop of it. So again, it's now another option for riding that's not going to be 110 degrees in August. You can get up on the mesa and get out of the heat and ride some of those things. It also allows us to have what we like to call the plunge to Powderhorn. So it's an easier alternative for people that don't necessarily want to do the full plunge and the really technical kind of lower half of the plunge. You can, take a shuttle up, you can ride on the plunge and then take some other trails, to get back over to Powderhorn and then ride the bike park down back to your car. And it's a more intermediate level experience, something that, I'd take my wife on.
Yeah.
As opposed to riding the last
full plunge.
That last 17 miles, which is pretty gnarly in a lot of spots. So.
You've ridden the whole thing, I take it?
I have not ridden the bottom part yet. Yeah. So, and then, we've also got a lot going on in the bike park. We've built, just since I've been here, we built a new green trail and a new blue trail. And we'll continue to work with the Forest Service on expanding and building more trail, revitalizing some of our old ones. We took a good, long, hard approach on Pinball, which is our Black Diamond bike trail, and did some new features and kind of brought that back to what it was a few years ago. And then just working on our master plan and where are we headed and how much trail can we build and what are the things that we're still missing that make it a really great bike park experience.
And how much ridership are you getting up there? You're open, are you open every day of the week during the summer?
In the summer, we're open Thursday through Sunday. And then kind of after Labor Day, we scale it back to just weekends. The kids are back to school. Kids are a big part of those Thursdays and Fridays. So we'll scale it back a little bit and then kind of cap things off with Color Weekend, which is always the last weekend of September. And that's important for not only the bike park, but just general visitation and people coming up. And we kind of have that big festival and lots of activities and scenic chair rides to view all the, golden aspen leaves.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
There have been a couple of foot races up there in the last 10 years. Are those going to continue?
Like running rate, like trail running.
Yeah. We had a couple of adventure races a few years back.
I don't know about most of those. I haven't been part of most of the organization of those. I do know that there was one up on the very top, like on Craig's Crest a couple of weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, something like that. I certainly hope those things continue as well.
Yeah. The couple of races that I did at Powderhorn were super fun. I think that's a great place to have a run, get up again out of the heat, and you have a deck and a facility that you can kind of gather everybody around. It was really nice. Let's talk about the rebranding that you did and how that came about. So you guys did a new logo, and was that in 2021 also? No,
that was a few years ago. That was the start of the 2019-2020 season.
Okay.
Yeah. So kind of before COVID. When resorts become part of a different group, oftentimes, some rebranding happens. I think it was important for us to communicate that it's, a different Powderhorn. It's, while a lot of the terrain hasn't changed, a lot of our attitude has, and, we're certainly building on that. And I think it was an important, small piece of communication. Ultimately, a logo is a logo, and it doesn't change the skiing. And if the skiing wasn't any good, then that would have been immaterial. So for us, being focused really on the experience, the skiing, the snowboarding, the biking in the summer, what's going on in hospitality, all of those things, lessons and lesson programs, that's really where the rubber hits the road. And that's where we put a lot of our focus. So
I think you're doing a great job. Some of the other improvements that you've done in the last few years, the automatic gates. So did that eliminate a lot of employees? Was that obviously a cost savings and a convenience, but was it hard to think, well, we're not going to be able to employ as many people?
I don't know if I would agree that it eliminated a lot of employees. I think it just transfers where some of those employees might work. It didn't, you still have someone at the lift corrals that's looking at the pictures of the people coming through the gate instead of going over to check your ticket that's hanging off of your jacket. They're just, trying to pair up, faces and the account information that's popping through. So in certain ways, it really didn't change much. I think the biggest benefit for us really is just convenience for the consumer. Once you have an RFID card, you can reload it online. And that's whether you have a season pass or a lift ticket or whatever product. You can just go online and reload it and never have to go back to the ticket office. You avoid a lot of lines. Yeah. You can avoid, it's kind of a COVID hangover thing, but you don't have someone kind of in your face looking for your lift ticket at the lift line. You just put it in a pocket, kind of forget about it and kind of breeze through those lifts. So for us, it's more of a convenience factor for the consumer. It's certainly an interesting piece of technology. I think that might continue to evolve over the next 20 years. And, who knows, you end up embedded with an RFID chip in your arm or in your phone. Your phones are the ones that are actually activating the gate, that sort of thing. But it'll be interesting to watch for sure.
Yeah. What other kinds of things are you looking forward to implementing at Powderhorn? I mean, I'm sure you get the question all the time about the West End lift. It's a kind of a throwback.
Yeah, we've got a couple of things, in the near term and in the long term. We've purchased a new groomer for our fleet this year. So again, just making sure that the grooming fleet is up to date, newer, not, you're eliminating a little bit of maintenance and downtime and, just like if you owned an old car versus a new car, so that piece is important. Those things are ridiculously expensive. It is definitely more than a median home price in Mesa County. So those things are, really important to keep up with. We're working with the Forest Service on approvals to install a new magic carpet lift or a conveyor lift to expand our beginner area to be able to teach more very new, inexperienced lessons. Again, that's going to be really key to growth, key to
getting new skiers started.
Exactly. Whether that's youth or adults or people that are moving to the area that never have had the opportunity to experience skiing before. That piece is really key. We are working on what are we going to do with the West End lift and that replacement. Not ready to make any kind of announcements, but that's certainly being thought of, being engineered. Being planned on for a replacement sometime soon. And then after that, we're always in this constant, what's new, what's next, what are the things that we need to improve on. I think that the base lodge needs a little bit of love and some expansion would be fantastic. Being able to add to that lodge, adding capacity, adding some seating capacity. The deck is great, but boy, when it snows, there's, the lodge gets
inside.
A little bit small, right? So, looking at those things and how do we move that forward? It's always, it's like when you paint your house and then all of a sudden you realize that, boy, that trim is not the right color anymore. Or, you always find that next thing that you've optimized one thing and now you've got to look at something else. So for us, that's always a top of mind, always trying to evolve and look at those things to make them better.
Mm-hmm. And is there any chance of further expansion of the runs? Or do you feel like it's kind of set where it is now?
In certain ways, there probably is some expansion. And, there's some thoughts that we've had, and how to make a couple of areas better accessible, or maybe a little bit better. Looking at it strictly from a business standpoint, the mountain side of the resort has significantly more capacity than the base area, right? So adding a lot of capacity uphill doesn't make sense without addressing a lot of those things in the base area capacity or parking capacity or things like that. We built a brand new parking lot last year, which was a fantastic addition, but if we're going to continue to expand skiers and the ski experience, then we need to also continue to look at those things too.
Mm-hmm. So. And what about the tubing? Is that going to come back, or is that gone?
Yeah, I don't know that in the near term there will be any kind of tubing at the resort. There's not really enough of a bed base to make that thing work at night. There's Old Powderhorn just up the road, which seems to be a very, very popular
tubing spot. Yeah.
Tubing spot. So as a business, that doesn't really work very well at the moment. Maybe someday in the future, we could look at it again. But for now, I don't think that'll be anything we would want to do in the near future.
My kids ask about it a lot. It was fun.
Yeah.
And then there were some other things that were tried up at Powderhorn. I think before you got here, they had the bungee, not bungee, but the jumping pit for a while. It had a tower and jump into the big pit area. You go to those other ski areas. Sounds
interesting.
And they've got the bungee jumping things and all that. But how did COVID affect the skier numbers and the summer numbers up at Powderhorn? And are you still recovering from that, or was it better than expected?
Yeah. How do I say that COVID was actually a really good thing? I mean, it wasn't. COVID was an absolutely horrible thing. I mean, millions of people have died. It's a really, really horrible thing that has happened across the globe. At the same time, for a resort like Powderhorn or some of the other resorts in our portfolio, it was actually beneficial for us because just a lot of people stopped traveling, right? Those typical families, and I'm a typical family, that went to Aspen or Vail or something like that for a week or even a long weekend or down to Telluride. A lot of those things really just kind of evaporated. People didn't feel comfortable traveling. They didn't want to stay in a hotel. So, a day, resort like Powderhorn, it's a day's drive or less. It's a day resort. Resorts like that really saw an upswing in visitation. For us, we've been able to capitalize on that and use that to our advantage and continue that growth. So, in both summer and winter.
Yeah. Well, obviously, the bulk of your clientele comes from the Grand Valley, but you get a lot of people from the other side of the Grand Mesa, Cedar Ridge. Do you get a lot of people from Delta, Montrose?
Yeah, those are all expanding markets for us. Delta, Montrose, Ridgeway, down that direction. And then same thing, I would say, Debec,